You might be looking around your own life, the learner, and thinking, there's got to be more. That feeling isn't new.
Mhm.
In fact, it's the very spark that ignited the journey for the author of the material we're diving deep into today, the millionaire fastlane.
Right.
He kicks off his book with this story about being a pudgy teenager who had a chance encounter with a Lamborghini Countach.
Yeah, I remember that part.
It wasn't just about the flashy car. It was the realization that building wealth, that kind of freedom didn't have to take 50 long years.
The total paradigm shift for him right then and there.
Exactly. That Lamborghini moment was a rebellion against what he calls financial mediocrity, and that rebellion, that desire for something more. Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today, all based on his book.
And what's fascinating right from the start is that this isn't some stuffy academic paper.
No, not at all.
This is a self-published work, a really direct message from the author. You see that in the details, the P.O. Box 93124 in Phoenix, Arizona.
Right, he puts it all out there.
The ISBN, even a Library of Congress control number. It was professionally typeset, printed in the USA, and he includes this clear disclaimer too.
What does the disclaimer say?
Basically that these are his views, at the time of writing, and it's all for informational purposes. It feels very independent, very grounded.
Absolutely. And you really get a sense this was a deeply personal drive for him. I mean, look at the dedications.
Yeah, those are interesting.
First, he thanks Cakes, apparently his mother, for those constant "get a job, baby" remarks.
Which he says ironically fueled his determination.
Right, to find a different path. Then, Michelle Hirsch gets a nod for early encouragement. And finally, the Fastlane forum community.
Ah, yeah, the forum comes up a lot. Clearly a big source of support for him, keeping him focused on getting the book done.
It really paints a picture of a journey with, both resistance and support along the way.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you can see he intentionally structured the book to really hammer home his central arguments.
Oh, so
Well, each chapter wraps up with a chapter summary, fastlane distinctions. It's like a quick recap highlighting how his ideas are different from, the conventional wisdom.
kind of reinforcing the core message each time.
Exactly. And it's not just abstract concepts. He uses real-world examples, stories from the Fastlane forum, though he changes the names, which is good.
Shows respect for the community.
Right. He even invites readers to join the conversation there, making it clear this is an ongoing dialogue, not just a book dropped into the void.
And that really brings us to why this might be hitting home for you, the learner. Have you ever felt that nagging sense that your current path, well, the one you're on, just isn't going to deliver the life you truly want?
That feeling of being stuck, maybe.
Yeah, maybe your job feels like a grind, or you're carrying the weight of debt, watching your savings just like inch forward so slowly.
Or maybe you've seen people who have achieved real wealth and wondered, how did they do that?
Exactly. Perhaps you've even tried those get-rich-quick schemes that always seem to fizzle out.
Uh-huh. Or felt the sting of losses in supposedly safe, traditional investments.
If any of that sounds familiar, if you've ever thought there's got to be a better way, then this deep dive is definitely for you.
So that leads us to our mission here. What are we really trying to accomplish in this deep dive?
Good question.
Our goal is basically to pull out the most valuable nuggets of information from the Millionaire Fastlane. We want to help you understand the core of his arguments.
Especially the big differences he draws between his fast lane approach and that more common get-rich-slow philosophy.
Exactly. We're aiming to give you a shortcut to understanding his main ideas, his framework.
Okay, let's dive straight into this get-rich-slow critique then. Because he doesn't just, disagree with it.
Oh no, he comes out swinging.
Yeah.
He seems genuinely surprised that people still put their faith in it.
Especially after things like economic downturns and market crashes.
Right. He questions the stability of that whole traditional financial landscape. And what's fascinating is the core of his objection.
What's the main issue for him?
He sees get rich slow as fundamentally flawed. Why? Because it demands a lifetime of employment.
Decades and decades.
It's heavily reliant on Wall Street, which, let's face it, can be pretty unpredictable. And at its heart, it's completely tied to the relentless march of time.
Time you can't get back.
Precisely. And he has this quote, it's really powerful. If your road to wealth devours your active adult life and it's not guaranteed, that road sucks.
Wow. Very direct.
It's a visceral critique, no mincing words.
Exactly. He really hits hard on this idea that the years when you have the most energy, the most vitality, what he calls your real golden years, Those are the years you sacrifice. You put them on hold for a future that, well, isn't even guaranteed in the end.
And then there's the whole 5-for-2 trade he talks about.
Right, explain that.
5 days of work, often doing things you'd rather not be doing just to get 2 days of freedom.
And that cycle just repeats week after week, year after year.
And he argues that equation is fixed. It's fundamentally limiting. You're always trading the majority of your time for a minority of freedom.
And if we connect this back to you, the learner, you can probably relate to that feeling of wanting more sooner.
That impatience, maybe?
Yeah. When you have dreams, aspirations, the idea of waiting decades, maybe until you're past your prime to maybe achieve them, that can be incredibly frustrating.
You might be looking for a more direct path, something faster to build the life you actually envision now, not just in retirement.
Precisely. And that leads us right into the origin story of the millionaire fastlane itself and the mindset that fuels it.
It all goes back to that Lamborghini.
That pivotal Lamborghini prophecy moment, that, 90-second encounter, it wasn't just seeing a cool car.
No, it was like that lightning bolt you mentioned.
Yeah.
It fundamentally shifted his perspective on what was possible.
Right then and there, he decided he wanted that level of wealth, that freedom.
And crucially, he wanted it while he was young enough to actually enjoy it.
That was the key shift.
And following that experience, what's interesting is where he focused his research.
Not on the famous billionaires.
So no. He deliberately sought out what he calls fameless millionaires.
Mm.
Maybe the person living down the street, quietly building an extraordinary lifestyle without any public recognition.
Trying to understand the how behind their success.
Exactly. Their strategies, their mindset. He was driven to figure that out.
And it wasn't exactly a smooth ride, was it? He talks about facing resistance.
Oh, yeah. Especially from his mother with the constant, get a job, baby.
Right. He even tried to explain the difference between, linear wealth creation from a job versus the potential for exponential growth in entrepreneurship.
You could really feel the frustration in his writing, that sense of being misunderstood.
The emotional weight of it.
And then there's that anecdote, the blizzard of awakening.
Tell us about that.
He was working as a limo driver in Chicago, stuck in this horrible blizzard, facing the harsh reality of that life.
Sounds bleak.
It was. And he had this moment asking himself, is this what my life has become? That discomfort, that feeling trapped.
That actually sparked something.
It sparked the idea for his first internet business, a website solving a problem he faced every day, finding good limo companies in other cities.
Wow. From limo driver to web entrepreneur.
And it actually gained traction pretty fast. He says it made $1,000 in just 3 days.
Which, as he describes it, felt like hitting the jackpot after struggling financially for years.
Absolutely. But even with that early win, he had another crucial insight.
What was that?
He realized his income was still tied to his time. He was getting paid for building websites.
Still trading hours for dollars, essentially.
Exactly. He knew that to really scale, he needed a model where income wasn't directly proportional to the hours he put in.
So what did he do?
That led him to explore website advertising.
Okay, shifting the model.
Right. And what's key here is that he actually saw an initial dip in income when he made that switch. It wasn't instant success.
That must have been tough.
For sure. But then, as the advertising business gained momentum, the growth went exponential, like a hockey stick curve,
Wow.
And this whole experience led him to develop his concept of the money tree.
The money tree. Sounds nice.
It's the idea of creating systems, processes, automation, things that let you work less over time while your income keeps growing, maybe even faster.
So detaching income from time spent working?
Precisely. He gives these almost unbelievable examples, going to Vegas, being sick, even taking a whole month off, and the income just kept flowing in.
Building something that works for you?
That's the core idea. It's not about just trading your time anymore.
And he uses that road trip analogy to explain this further, right?
Yeah, it's a really good one. He says the pursuit of wealth often stalls because people fixate only on the destination wealth and ignore the road trip itself.
Meaning the tools and strategies needed to get there.
Exactly. The essential tools, the specific strategies, the components you actually need. Just wanting wealth isn't enough.
You need the right vehicle and the map.
You got it. It's not just desire. It's understanding and implementing the underlying mechanics.
Okay, so he argues that people who haven't achieved wealth are often too road-focused in the wrong way.
Yeah, stuck on those traditional paths, the 9 to 5, the slow savings, which, in his view, just aren't designed for rapid wealth creation. They're missing key parts of the formula.
And this is where he introduces his main framework, the fastlane roadmap.
Right. He describes it as being governed by a specific wealth equation. a set of principles designed to lead towards wealth as the destination.
And he contrasts this with two other roadmaps.
Yes. The sidewalk roadmap, which he says leads to poorness,
Okay.
and the slow lane roadmap, which he argues ultimately ends in mediocrity.
Fast lane, slow lane, sidewalk. Got it.
And he mentions this wealth equation, but it's important for you, the learner, to know he doesn't fully detail it right at the start.
It's more like a concept introduction.
Exactly. He's teasing the idea that there's a logical, almost mathematical framework behind why each path leads where it does, setting the stage for later.
Right. So let's take a closer look at that first one, the sidewalk. He paints a pretty stark picture, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. He describes it as being driven by short-term thinking, instant gratification.
Living for the moment, maybe too much.
Yeah, often selfishness, and a fundamental lack of financial responsibility. He uses this vivid analogy, driving at the financial red line on a narrow road right next to a cliff.
Wow, that's unsettling. All thrill, no safety net.
Pretty much. And he lays out specific sidewalking symptoms.
Like what?
Consistently living paycheck to paycheck, always accumulating more debt, and a strong tendency to blame everyone else, the economy, the boss, bad luck for their problems.
Taking no ownership.
Exactly. He's quite firm. The sidewalk, unless you win the lottery or get a massive inheritance, is not a path to building real wealth. It's just constant financial stress.
But he does offer a different view of wealth, doesn't he? Beyond just money.
Yes, and this is really important. He broadens the definition. He talks about strong family relationship, community connection, making a positive difference.
More holistic.
Right. He even quotes, "It's a wonderful life. Remember, no man is a failure who has friends." It's about more than just the bank balance.
That's a good perspective to include.
And then he shares a really eye-opening personal story after he sold his first company.
The one born from the Blizzard idea.
That's the one. He got a check for, I think it was $250,000, and he initially thought, I'm rich, started planning all the spending.
Ah, the impersonation of wealth he talked about.
Exactly. He learned the hard way that cash isn't the same as wealth-generating assets. The money just evaporated spending. Bad investments in tech stocks right after the crash. Taxes.
Ouch. A harsh lesson.
Definitely. It really highlights the difference between financing luxuries you can't really afford versus genuine wealth, which is the freedom to buy things outright without debt.
Like the example he uses of buying his brother a Lexus with cash.
Right. That was an act of freedom and generosity, not driven by obligation or keeping up appearances.
Okay, moving on. He tackles that old saying, money doesn't buy happiness.
Yeah, and his counterpoint is pretty direct. Does poverty?
Huh. Good point.
He challenges the logic, suggesting it's often a rationalization for people who've sort of resigned themselves to never having much money.
Like a coping mechanism.
Maybe. He argues that while money isn't the only source of happiness, a lack of it definitely causes a lot of unhappiness and stress.
Which leads him into this idea of lifestyle servitude. What's that about?
It's the trap of financing the appearance of wealth. The fancy car, the big house, and then becoming completely bound by the payments.
Car payment, the mortgage.
Exactly. He uses his own experience buying a Mitsubishi 3000 GT sports car right out of college. That dream car quickly became a financial parasite, draining his freedom.
Because he was stuck working to pay for it.
Right. And he connects this directly to instant gratification. That desire for immediate pleasure, immediate possessions, often leads to long-term debt and pain.
He uses debt and obesity as parallel examples, right?
Yeah, both driven by prioritizing short-term satisfaction over long-term well-being. Then he makes this important distinction between a luck mindset and a process mindset.
What's the difference there?
He strongly believes, like Mark Cuban apparently, that what looks like luck is often just the result of consistent effort, taking action, putting yourself out there where opportunities can actually find you.
So process creates the conditions for luck to happen.
That's the idea, which is why he's so critical of those get-rich-quick infomercials.
Because they appeal to the wrong mindset.
Exactly. They target that sidewalker mentality, wanting the sudden windfall without the work, the event without the process.
And he also talks about victimitis.
Yeah, that tendency to blame external factors for your own financial situation. He uses the example of someone working low-wage retail.
Right, feeling helpless.
And he argues, while the situation might be tough, it's ultimately your responsibility to find ways to increase your value, improve your circumstances, not just be a victim.
Which ties into accountability versus just responsibility.
Yes, a crucial distinction. Responsibility might just be acknowledging a problem exists. Accountability is taking full ownership, past choices, present actions, and actively changing your behavior for better results.
Taking the driver's seat, as that forum quote said?
Exactly. Actively steering your own financial future.
Okay, so that covers the sidewalk pretty thoroughly. Now let's move to the next step up he describes, the slow lane.
Right. He sees this as a definite improvement over the sidewalk. It involves responsibility, accountability, but he still thinks it's fundamentally flawed.
Why flawed? Isn't it the standard advice? Save diligently, invest long term.
It is, but his core issue remains. The prime years for enjoying wealth, youth, health, energy are largely sacrificed, deferred until the end.
Waiting for retirement, basically.
Yeah. And he emphasizes it's often a decades-long plan, heavily reliant on navigating corporate politics for slow, incremental advancement.
The corporate ladder climb?
And he revisits that Saturday and Sunday is the paycheck from Monday through Friday idea. Constant deferral of gratification. Your life is always just 2 days away.
Ugh. And the negative 60% return on time.
Yeah, the 5-for-2 work week. He sees it as a fundamental limitation, a huge drain on your most valuable asset time.
So his conclusion about the slow lane.
Is that its structure, its math, basically predisposes it to a destination of mediocrity. Maybe not poverty like the sidewalk, but highly unlikely to reach true, abundant wealth and freedom.
A path with a pretty low ceiling.
That's his argument. Incremental progress, but ultimately limited.
Which brings us to a chapter with a deliberately provocative title, The Criminal Trade, Your Job.
Yeah, that one definitely grabs your attention. He presents a very critical view here.
How does he frame it?
He sees a traditional job as a transaction.
Huh?
You trade your freedom, your time, for freedom.
Money, time for money, the basic exchange.
Right. And he uses that Robert Frost quote ironically. By working faithfully 8 hours a day, you may eventually get to be the boss and work 12 hours a day.
Huh. A cynical take on promotion.
Definitely. He shares his own experience at job workshops before college graduation, feeling really underwhelmed by the limited prospects presented.
Feeling like the paths weren't very inspiring.
Exactly. And he argues that real valuable experience, the kind that builds wealth, is usually gained through direct action entrepreneurship, not just working within a structured job role.
He also raises a really important point about skills becoming obsolete, right?
Yes, very timely. He cites examples like auto workers, typewriter repairmen, travel agents, how specialized skills can vanish quickly in a changing economy.
Which challenges the whole idea of job security.
He argues it's largely an illusion today. And he doesn't shy away from the downsides of employment, either office politics, what he calls the suckage of it,
We've all been there.
and the pay yourself last reality. Taxes come out first, retirement contributions might be limited, you get what's left.
Okay, so this critical view of jobs sets up the next section. Why you aren't rich. The slow lane's mathematical prison.
Exactly. Now he gets into the mechanics. The math he believes inherently restricts wealth building in the slow lane.
What's the core argument?
That the value of a job is fundamentally tied to time. Hourly wage times hours worked, or an annual salary for your time over the years.
Time.
Right. And the crucial point is, time is finite. You can't leverage it or multiply it easily for rapid wealth creation. He shows how even high salaries are mathematically limited by the clock.
Trading time for money hit the ceiling.
That's his point. And he extends this to compound interest within the slow lane, like in 401ks.
Doesn't compound interest work?
It works, but it's slow. He argues its effectiveness for rapid wealth is also heavily dependent on huge amounts of time passing. And again, you can't really control or leverage it to speed things up dramatically.
So the typical get-rich-slow success stories.
He tackles those directly. He highlights the incredibly long time frames usually involved, like investing in the S&P 500 from 1940 to 2011. You'd be ancient by the time you saw massive returns.
Asking, is that really appealing when you're young and vibrant?
Exactly. His conclusion is blunt.
Yeah.
To get wealthy fast, you have to break free from these time-dependent formulas.
And he thinks trying to just increase your salary through more education is misguided.
Yeah, he argues that even with expensive degrees or certifications, you're still fundamentally trading time for money, just maybe at a higher rate. Project management certs, medical school, still time for money.
Which leads to the paradox of practice. What's that?
It's a pointed question.
Yeah.
Did the famous get-rich-slow gurus actually get rich following their own slow advice?
Or did they get rich selling books and seminars about getting rich slow?
Precisely. He mentions Suze Orman, Robert Kiyosaki. Suggests maybe their wealth came from building their brands, their businesses, not just decades of passive investing.
He even mentions Kiyosaki's Lamborghini, hinting it wasn't bought with mutual fund dividends.
Right. It raises questions about whether they practice what they preach as their primary wealth-building strategy.
Okay, so building on the flaws, he then outlines specific dangers of the slow lane.
Yes. 7 key risks he sees inherent in that path.
Where are they?
Health declining with age, the job itself being insecure, lifestyle inflation creeping up, accumulating debt, unexpected life events throwing you off course, market volatility, and the big one, time running out.
And his point is that most of those are uncontrollable.
Exactly. He says 5 of the 7 are largely outside your direct control.
So slow laners often focus on the one thing they can control.
Expenses. Trying to cut back, save more. It's often the only lever they feel they have.
But he argues that's not enough.
Right. Because the underlying math of the slow lane, he insists, is predisposed to mediocrity, no matter how frugal you are.
So true wealth creation needs more than just saving.
It needs exponential income growth combined with expense management. The slow lane limits the income side dramatically.
He uses a raffle analogy here, doesn't he?
Yeah, a really good one to illustrate the different odds and potential prizes for the sidewalk, slow lane, and fast lane makes the risk-reward much clearer.
Okay, finally we get to the core of his idea, the fastlane roadmap, wealth.
Yes. And he defines it as much more than just a strategy. It's a lifestyle choice, a commitment.
Or what?
To a blend of beliefs, processes, and actions, all focused on rapid wealth creation, way beyond the typical middle-class ceiling.
And he uses his own story here, right? Selling his company.
Yeah, a powerful example. Selling a company for $32 million after just 4 intense years of work.
4 years. That's definitely rapid.
He highlights the speed and the key factors of the business, summarizing them as CUL.
Control, uniqueness, and leverage. He also admits the huge lifestyle sacrifices involved during those years. It wasn't easy.
So the fast lane operates differently mathematically.
Totally. Controllable, unlimited variables. It breaks free from the time cage of the slow lane. ULL, uncontrollable limited leverage, is replaced by CUL.
And it involves a mindset shift.
A huge one. From being a passive consumer to an active producer and creator of value.
How does that help?
He says it sharpens your perception. You start seeing opportunities everywhere, and you get much better at spotting scams. He introduces this wealth acceleration factor, or WAF. Explain that.
Think of it like a multiplier on your efforts. Traditional employment or investing might have a low WAF, maybe 8% from mutual funds, say.
Okay.
But a successful, scalable business, the WAF could be massive. He gives an example of 1,700% for medical devices. It's about finding ways to amplify your output dramatically.
And how does this acceleration happen in the fast lane?
By creating or buying assets that can appreciate significantly.
Like businesses or maybe real estate?
Right. Then actively adding value to those assets, manipulating the key variables for growth, and then realizing that value through liquidation events.
Selling the asset or the company?
Exactly. That's the wealth accelerator mechanism he describes.
He then outlines 5 fast lane seedlings, or money trees. What are those?
These are foundational business models he sees as having strong potential for fast lane growth.
Okay, list them out.
Rental systems, like real estate, he calls it Wealth 1.0, good passive income. Computer software systems, huge scalability, replication, potential passivity.
Makes sense. What else?
Content systems, info products, easy digital replication, distribution systems, leveraging existing networks or building your own, and human resource systems, building teams, automation to multiply effort.
So different ways to build scalable businesses.
Right. He emphasizes their potential for passive income and scalability.
Yeah.
He also talks about starting small, building embryonic passive income streams, even just $1.
Proving the concept.
Exactly. And he notes the wealthy use compound interest mainly for income and liquidity after they're wealthy, not to get wealthy initially. The initial wealth comes from leveraged growth in a fast lane business.
This leads him to the law of affection. What's that?
It's fundamental. The more lives you positively affect, either in scale, number of people, or magnitude, significance of impact per person, the richer you become.
Value creation on a grand scale.
That's the heart of it.
Okay, now turning to a critical element. Your vehicle to wealth. You.
What's key here?
First, the right business structure. He stresses C-Corp, S-Corp, LLCs.
For liability protection and tax reasons. Exactly. He warns against sole proprietorships and general partnerships where your personal assets are at risk. Briefly mentions income splitting in C-Corp for tax efficiency later on.
And he talks about choice.
Hugely important. Conscious daily choices shape your future. Perseverance isn't some magic trait, it's the result of consistent choices.
But he also warns against treasonous choices.
Yeah, actions that do irreparable harm to your goals. He shares some stark examples, like his own near-miss street racing or someone else's drunk driving incident. These choices create a lasting negative mortgage.
And the butterfly effect.
Right. Minor choices today can have massive long-term consequences, good or bad. He distinguishes between choices of perception, your beliefs, and choices of action.
Beliefs drive actions.
Exactly, like his perception shift after seeing the Lamborghini. He also mentions a tool, the WADM.
Weighted average decision matrix.
Yeah, just as a practical way to evaluate complex choices more objectively by weighing different factors.
Okay, next up, deodorize flatulent headwinds. Catchy title.
Huh. Yeah. He uses the analogy of an airplane defying gravity. You need constant effort to overcome obstacles. Headwinds are those societal norms, negative influences, personal things holding you back.
Things slowing you down.
Right. He talks about turning his own tough environment into motivation. Negative friends, slow lane thinking those are headwinds. You need to associate with empowering people to create accelerative wins.
Makes sense. Bad relationships, too.
Big potential roadblocks, he argues. And then he stresses the scarcity of time versus the abundance of money. Don't waste time on trivialities.
Protect your time fiercely.
And he differentiates right time, free time, from wrong time. Indentured time, like your job. Maximize free time for wealth building.
Which brings us to parasitic debt.
He calls it junk in the trunk, finance luxuries, big mortgages that don't produce income. They create indentured time because you have to keep working to pay for them. Limits your choices.
So how do you control it?
The law of chocolate chip cookies. Control the source, instant gratification, unnecessary spending. Control the impulse, prevent the debt.
Simple but effective idea.
And he wraps up by saying, time is the great equalizer. The difference between rich and poor often comes down to valuing free time, the chosen roadmap, and managing parasitic debt.
Moving on to refueling. Refuel your vehicle. Education.
Right. He points out he became skilled in internet tech through self-teaching, despite unrelated degrees. Real education for entrepreneurship often starts after formal schooling.
And education is accessible.
Absolutely. Libraries, internet knowledge is everywhere if you seek it. He suggests life university strategies.
Like listening to audiobooks while driving or working out.
Exactly. Driving university, exercise university, waiting university. Use those otherwise dead moments.
He also challenges the listener to be different from most people, doesn't he?
Yeah, to break away from limited financial thinking, be willing to make short-term sacrifices for long-term gain. Fastlane success needs serious effort. Red-lined effort, he calls it. No shortcuts.
Failure is part of it.
Crucial part. He sees his own failures as essential learning steps towards finding the fast lane. And he distinguishes between intelligent risks.
Limited downside, unlimited upside.
Right, versus moronic risks, bottomless downside, limited upside. Take intelligent risks in fast lane businesses.
And the final message here.
Take action now. Don't wait for the perfect time. Action is the catalyst. Now we get to a really pivotal section. Find your open road, the 5 fast lane commandments.
Okay, setting the rules of the road.
He starts by saying the slow laner's road is their job. The fast laner's road is their business. But the road must have the potential to lead to wealth, which many jobs and even some businesses don't.
And the law of affection comes back.
Yes, as the gatekeeper. Impact millions in scale or magnitude. Stop chasing money, start chasing needs, problems, pain points, service gaps.
Solve problems for others.
Exactly. Businesses built on selfish premises usually fail. Money is attracted to businesses that provide real value. He also distinguishes love of a craft from passion for an end goal. Passion is the fuel.
Okay, so what are the 5 commandments?
1. Need. Solve a real market need. 2. Entry. Have some barrier to entry. 3. Control. Own and direct your business.
Got it. The last 2.
4. Scale. Potential to impact many people. 5. Time. Ability to detach your time from income eventually.
And he uses MLM as an example of failing the entry commandment.
Often, yes. Unless you own the MLM company itself, the barrier to entry for distributors is usually very low.
Yeah.
He uses the pyramid analogy and the gold rush idea.
Sell shovels. Don't just dig for gold.
Right. Be the enabler, the platform owner. He also warns about the everyone is doing it signal for investments or trends.
Like tech stocks in the 90s or the housing boom usually means it's overheated.
Precisely. A sign to be cautious or get out.
Yeah, for people whose income source is controlled by others, franchisees, distributors, MLMers, they lack true control.
So invest in your own brand. Absolutely. Not someone else's. He even critiques putting advertising decals for other companies on your car. Promote yourself. He sees MLM as okay for learning, but ultimately a hitchhiker approach. Be the creator, not the joiner.
What about the barricades to affection?
Lack of scale, limited units, and lack of magnitude, low profit per unit. His coffee shop example illustrates this serves a need, but reach and profit per customer are capped. Affection mainly benefits owners producers.
And the commandment of time again.
The goal is disconnecting time from income via automation systems. He contrasts this with a business that owns the owner, like the coffee shop example where Ashland is tied to it daily.
What are examples of systems that detach time?
Digital products, subscription services, affiliate marketing systems. He introduces fastlane purity and analyzes his old limo service. It fell short on control and scale. Not purely fastlane.
And he lists some internet business systems that align well.
Yeah, subscription models, content systems, lead generation, affiliate marketing, e-commerce. Gives examples like a website monitoring service for subscriptions.
Finally, he gives this big call to action, the supercharger acronym.
Right. FASTLANE, SUPERCHARGER. This is a quick rundown of all the key principles. Focus, accountability, solve needs, time detachment, leverage, entry barriers, replication, control,
Keep going.
honest intent, action, greatness, education, risk, cash flow, honest action, automation, replicate success, great habits, affection, and ruthlessness in focus. It's a mouthful, but a good summary checklist.
And he anticipates listener objections like debt, job, lack of time.
Yeah, he tackles those head on. Debt, job constraints, lack of time, spouse disapproval, the apparent hypocrisy of wanting stuff versus freedom, feeling stuck.
What are his core responses?
Focus on beliefs driving choices.
Yeah.
Understand the difference between being imprisoned by stuff and being free to afford what you want. Analyze past choices honestly to change future ones.
And he wraps up this part by contrasting what the fast lane is and is not.
Exactly. A final list of contrasts to really drive home the core message and the distinctions from the slow lane and sidewalk.
So to bring it all together for you, the learner, the key takeaway from our deep dive into these initial parts of the Millionaire Fast Lane is, well, it presents a really radical, maybe transformative alternative to that standard get-rich-slow story.
Mm-hmm. It champions achieving significant wealth relatively quickly through strategic entrepreneurship.
Right. The core ideas revolve around finding and filling real market needs, building businesses that can scale and that you actually control.
And critically actively decoupling your personal time from how you generate income, building those systems.
And that leaves us with a provocative thought for you to consider. Are you truly content with the current speed, the direction of your own financial road trip?
Or has this discussion maybe sparked some questions? Made you wonder if there might be a faster lane available?
A more direct route to your goals, one that maybe you could build by creating your own vehicle of wealth.
We'd really encourage you to reflect on the author's challenges to conventional thinking and the possibilities a different path might offer.
Maybe check out that fast lane forum mentioned in the book. Look at your own situation through these different lenses: sidewalk, slow lane, fast lane.
And definitely keep those 5 fast lane commandments in mind when you're evaluating any future opportunities or business ideas.
It really comes down to taking control, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Consciously designing the financial future you want.